Hey, my name's Ruth. Thanks for tuning into this week's video. As you can see, I have a little friend who's going to do this week's video with me, or at least the intro. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you want to subscribe, you can do so somewhere below. Hit the little bell, and then you'll get a little bell from me every week when I post a new video. Alright, so today I want to talk to you about the messy, murky subject of vulnerability, the power of vulnerability, how we can live with less shame, and how we can share our gifts and be okay with putting things out there into the world. So that's what I want to dig into today. And a forewarning that I have a cold, and so I may look a little bit rough, and I may be a bit snotty, and I may be a bit sneezy, but I do have some tissues here, so please excuse me if I'm a bit snotty. All right, so let's get started. So yeah, being vulnerable is for me a superpower. It doesn't always feel like a superpower. It can feel like a super pain in the arse, but it really is a superpower. And I don't know if any of you know the work of Brené Brown, and she did an incredible TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. She talks a lot about vulnerability and shame and recovering our healthy sense of shame and not having a toxic sense of shame, and being able to be vulnerable so that we can live a wholehearted life. We can be courageous, we can be brave, we can be creative, we can be innovative, and we can share things with the world. And I'm going to dig into this week because it felt topical, because just to share a little bit of background, like last week on my channel I did a video about dance, and it was great. I've got such a great feedback from that video, and people were like, we thought you were going to dance in the video, like we were like waiting and you didn't dance. So I was kind of like, oh, and people were a bit miffed. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to dance on a video. So I did this primal dance video. I'll link to both the videos below. And oh my goodness me, I shared that dance video. I shared it on my Instagram and I shared it on here, and I really had a huge like, oh fuck, what have I done? What am I doing posting this online? Like, this is so embarrassing. I'm making such a fool of myself. I felt so vulnerable. I mean, like, I was dancing, I was just like, and I'm not like a professional dancer, you know, this isn't something that I do like professionally. So I felt really like exposed and up for ridicule from that. So I had a major vulnerability hangover. I kind of like switched my phone and my computer off and was just like hiding, like nobody see me. So I really felt that vulnerability coming up, and I get it from time to time. Like when I started posting these videos or when I share poems on my Instagram and stuff, I get major vulnerability. But when that vulnerability comes up for me, like it did just a few days ago when I shared the dance video, I'm like tapping into it. It's really uncomfortable. I feel like I'm going to vomit. I feel like an idiot. But then I know that underneath that, it's like there's this little voice inside me which I've cultivated over a long time, which is like, yeah, but if you're sharing something and you're getting that feeling of feeling vulnerable, you're feeling like you're doing something new and you're doing something scary, and potentially it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I mean, me like shaking my booty around in my hippie flares and going a bit nuts isn't everyone's cup of tea, and that's absolutely fine. So I've got to be like open to that and just be like, this is me and I'm going to share. So I think it's important when we get those feelings of vulnerability, maybe some feelings of shame coming up for us, it can actually be an indicator that we're doing something really kind of important on our path and something really good that's going to bring a lot of good about. And just to like talk a little bit more about vulnerability, I mean, it's like basically, I mean, everything I talk about on these videos is my experience, it's my worldview, it's not everyone's view. However, we are all as human beings neuro-biologically programmed by like evolution and nature and science to crave connection. Like we want to connect with people. We don't want to have like kind of like flighty surface relationships with people. We want to like get into the deep stuff. We want to be able to show people our flaws. We want to be able to talk about our grief and our pain and our joy and our happiness. And, you know, to do that, we have to be vulnerable. Like we have to be willing to be like, kind of, I'm going to take a chance. Like, obviously, we don't want to be too vulnerable with people we don't know or people that we're not kind of quite sure about. Our spidey senses might feel like it's not quite right to be vulnerable with them. But we want to be vulnerable with people so we can create connections, because, like, I don't know if like this is just a British thing, but it tends to be like I love it when people are happy. I love it when people are successful and people are doing well in their life. But I also kind of love it when I get together with a friend or someone that like I think is so successful and so beautiful and so perfect, kind of like confides in me that something's going wrong in their life, or like they're having some sort of like, I don't know, like health issue or work issue, or they've been dumped or something. I mean, I'm not that I'm happy that things are going wrong in their life, but it's nice to feel like everyone has got shit going on. Like we've all got our own shit going on, and like that vulnerability and being willing to share with people and show them a little bit of our hearts, our whole hearts, not just kind of like our masks that we can often put on when we're out in the world. Like we have all these different masks, like we have our work mask and we have our night out mask and we have our romantic mask, and kind of like underneath all this, it's sort of like I'm really interested in connecting with people that are willing to take that mask off. And I hope that as a friend and as a partner and as a family member and hopefully as a counsellor, like I'm able to be really authentic in myself and vulnerable, so that when people are around me, they actually feel like they can talk to me about things and they're not going to be judged. So that's why vulnerability is so important, because it's the doorway to real connection. And it's kind of like the antithesis of perfectionism. So when we are in a perfectionist mode, we're very much like, you know, we're concealing, we're putting on a mask, we are controlling, we're being incredibly controlling. This is me speaking from personal experience. So we're being incredibly controlling about things, and we are not being vulnerable at all. We're trying to like hold vulnerability back and lock it in the cupboard. So that's what perfectionism is doing with our vulnerability, and it's kind of like a bit like a dog digging a hole with a bone. It's digging a hole, it's putting our vulnerability, it's putting our shame as deep down as it can get it, so that we may go out in the world and people may look at us and think, wow, she's so successful and she looks so good, and all of these different things that I know in the past I've put on that perfectionist face, and she's got a great life. And then actually it's like you don't end up making real connections with people through living like that. You might end up with a lot of like surface kind of success and kind of a pretty life, but you don't have any real connection with people, and it feels really hollow and it doesn't feel authentic. So yeah, it's a real game changer if we can cultivate vulnerability, and you have to have courage to do it. It's a risk. It's a risk of, well, like this is just me talking about this personally. If I am vulnerable, I feel like I may be rejected, which is always scary. I feel like I might be abandoned, I may be laughed at, and I may actually be forced out of kind of a family, a friendship group, if I risk being vulnerable and showing my true self. So I think that those are the things that kind of mark people apart. Like, we all know people that just fly their freak flag and kind of live an alternative life and just don't really care as much what people think, or they're comfortable enough in themselves to move through that in the world and be like, if I'm not your cup of tea, that's okay, and if I am your cup of tea, great, but they're not going to compromise on who they are. So, sorry, just a brief snot moment. So vulnerability is all about us trying to cultivate that, being able to fly our freak flag and find that deep connection with people, because like I said, we're neuro-biologically wired for that. And I was talking to someone recently, my friend Bridget, who runs retreats, and we were saying that more and more, like, people are isolated, lonely, online a lot, and maybe find it very difficult to find that vulnerability, to get comfortable with that vulnerability and to create real connection with people. But for me, I mean, like, it's my life word. So I have this this thing where I think about my life word, like what's most important to me in my life. And it's interesting because we had a family friend who passed away last year, and she didn't do a bucket list. I think she had a few years that she knew that she was terminally ill. So she didn't do a bucket list, she didn't go on lots of holidays, she didn't spend lots of money on doing things like that. Her sole thing was connection. So it was like, I really want to nurture, cultivate, have experiences with friends, just really work on those core relationships and create real connections, so that when she did pass away, she felt like she'd really had that time where she'd been vulnerable with people and she'd been herself and she'd had really good connections, and that really rang true for me. So my life word at this current moment is connection, and it's so important, and vulnerability is such a big part of that. And you know, Brené Brown's research, I'm just reading my notes here because I wrote down, she did like thousands of stories, listened to thousands of people talk about these subjects over 6 years, and the thing that marked out people that could, you know, get through tough times, that really were living a wholehearted life, were the people that were willing to risk being vulnerable. Because what she found is that if we numb out our vulnerability, so we feel a little bit vulnerable and we are worried about something in work, or we're stressed, or our marriage isn't working, or just like all the things that we all deal with, then like people numb out. It's like, I don't want to feel vulnerable, I'm gonna eat a chocolate cake, I'm gonna go out and get wasted, and you know, I do all these things, but I think that if you numb and you numb and you numb, then you're not able to access your vulnerability and your pain for growth, but you're also not able to access joy. You can't selectively numb, basically. Like, if you numb your vulnerability, if you numb your pain, then you are also numbing your potential for joy, your potential for happiness. And the key thing that she said, like, marks the people out that are living a really wholehearted life and a courageous life, are the people that, you know, are willing to sit through that vulnerability and sit through that pain. Doesn't mean that you can't go out and have a few glasses of wine and you know, eat some cake, but if you're doing that and you know that you're doing that and you're not facing the vulnerability that's coming up for you, then you're also not going to be able to access happiness and joy, which are, you know, ultimately, you know, the Bing machine of life. Like on Monty Python, they say that you know, if you're like on a life support machine, what happens, you know, like when the flat line comes, the flat line means that you're dead. So like we all are seems like aiming for this flat line in life. We don't want ups, we don't want downs. We want to be like steady, and we want everything to be like this, but that actually means that we're dead or dying inside and not accessing our feelings. So we kind of like, we don't want like huge spikes and huge drops like this, but like, can we aim for something like we're riding the waves with a surfer, we're learning how to like get into the groove of I'm on a high, or I'm on a vulnerability low, like me last week hiding under my bed covers, and like that's okay. Like I'm here, I'm doing this video today, I've recovered from my vulnerability hangover, I've given myself a good talking to, and I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm still making these videos and I'm still showing up, and I'm proud of that. And that shows me that I'm able to access my vulnerability, and I think that it's really key to a happier life, and it's something that we have to cultivate in ourselves so that we can give to others. So like if you're a carer or you're a parent or you're a friend, basically all of us who are in connection with other people, we can't give to other people what we cannot give to ourselves. So give yourself the gift of vulnerability, take the risks, risk the rejection, risk the abandonment, risk not being everyone's cup of tea, and you'll find that then you can offer those gifts to other people, and then they can cultivate that in themselves because they can model and see that you're doing it and be like, wow, Ruth was really vulnerable then, maybe I can tell her this thing that I've not told anyone. And we can help each other to grow, and it's like we're all kind of like lifting each other up, and we rise by lifting others. So that's the takeaway. Let's just leave it at that. We rise by lifting others. So please feel free to leave me comments below, and leave me and Bo some comments below, and tell us if you enjoyed this video, if you feel like you've ever experienced a vulnerability hangover, and let us know how you got through that. And yeah, just know that I'm here for you, and you can be vulnerable with me. You can be vulnerable in comments, you can message me, and I hope that me being a little bit vulnerable and sharing my vulnerability hangovers has helped you this week. And if you like this video, as always, share, subscribe. I do this little thing with my hands when I do that, and I will see you next week for another video. All right, thanks guys, take care, bye.